Hello and welcome to Following On. It's myself, Jon Norman, and the main man, Steve Harmison, looking back at all the action in Multan, day two of the first test match between Pakistan and England. Harmy, draw, right? I mean, it's a draw. Shall we call it? It's a draw.
No,
5-day draw.
no,
Draw.
not convinced.
Draw.
Not convinced. Not convinced. I still think
Harmy, I'm
turning
telling
this.
you now, at midday on Friday, there will be some shaking of hands. I will do the 12 p.m. bulletin on talkSPORT, and we will come back and do it all over again next week because it's at the same
Yeah,
ground.
yeah, same ground. Be different next week because that pitch has been under sunlight, being baked for 5 days without the groundsman getting anywhere near. So he might not be as flat and prepared. It might be a little bit more broken up. I looked at that pitch report this morning. I wasn't up as quite as early as you. I seen it at lunchtime, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I
I thought it
seen,
was funny because NASA was like, I'm terrible at reading pitches.
yeah,
And it was like, well, if NASA can't read a pitch, well, and he's there, well, what chance has anybody else?
but he said something which I think resonated with me. Why I don't think this will be a draw. And you look on your sort of naked eye when you're seeing the camera going up and down the surface. Them cracks are getting bigger, and they're not gonna dry up overnight. They're not gonna, and if they start breaking up, that's the key to this whole test match. Is can these cracks have an effect on the game? The cracks that I saw were a little bit wide of off stump. And when they're wide of off stump, they're not in the game. I mean, they're not in the game. You might get a false shot, play and miss. One keeps low a little bit. Then you have to have skill factor, and this is where, I mean, yeah, he's been in the headlines quite a bit, and we spoke about him too much yesterday. But that's how these likes of Anderson and Broad were very good at using angles. Why is Jimmy being the best bowler of all time? Because given a surface, given an area, he can attack it from a certain part of the crease, whether it's close to stumps or really wide of the crease, and being able to move the ball laterally like that and use the crack to your advantage. Have we got bowlers on this in this test match like that? I don't think we have. I mean, Chris Wokes is the closest from an experience point of view. The rest of them are still a bit raw, naive, infancy of their careers. So if them cracks start developing and get a little bit closer to off stump, then I think we've got a cricket match on. And England are well behind the game at this moment in time because of the runs on the board. So I still think there is a result in this. I still think it's obviously Pakistan's to lose from here because they've got a huge total on the board. In England are possibly one down when it comes to Ben Duckett that way. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that it's a stalemate, it's a draw. You got Chris Wokes now batting at six. Um, a huge emphasis on Joe Root, and they batted beautifully tonight, the Joe and Zach. But they've got to start again tomorrow morning, and it just takes one, a worldly catch like what Ollie Pope got, or a run out, or a decision, an umpire's call that goes against you. Then all of a sudden you start again. I mean, you've seen it when first thing this morning when when there was a wicket, there's always something happening. It's always very difficult to start your innings in the subcontinent, and that for me is why I still think there's a result in this, as well as more often than not these games go fast forward. End of day three, majority of the time in day four, and we're 550 on the board. That's an awful lot of runs.
What about that moment? It was a real painful way to wrap up
Mm.
the first innings. Pakistan, who batted for 149 overs. And whilst I was watching England bowl for 149 overs, I had this discussion during the summer. Bazball and all of that. You can change a lot about cricket, but there are certain things you can't change, no matter what your mindset. If you have to bowl for 149 overs, you are going to be more knackered when you come out to bowl again than if you are bowling for 50 overs.
Mm.
So if England make Pakistan bowl for 100 odd overs, England are going to be in a better position. They're going to be fitter, fresher for this test and the next, than if they just go all gung-ho, as we've seen in the past, and are bowled out for what? What do they average? Can we remember? We had this conversation, 65 or something? Is it? Do they,
65.
I mean,
65.
if
Yeah.
they bat 65 overs on average in this test series, they're bowled. Bryden Castle go, do you know what? I might just allow this test cricket. It might not be for me. But anyway, that's aside. Ben Duckett, the
There's a
catch.
point in there, though. There's a point in there where you're making, which is if you go down the tactics that England have been going down, like you're saying, 149 overs, of which, and I'll bring Anderson back into the conversation again and how good what Jimmy give you. I mean, what was the Root didn't bowl a maiden, Jack bowled 5, 8, Bashir 3, so that's 8, 11. So there's been 21 maidens in that innings. Right.
Yeah.
If Jimmy Anderson was to bowl today in this game, like he did in Pakistan, back in Pakistan, if you look at his figures back then, if Jimmy bowled 30 overs, he bowled 15 overs of maidens. He bowled 16 overs of maidens. He went for no runs whatsoever. And all that he's doing, and the point I'm trying to make in that is he's pitching it up, he's bowling it straight. There's not a lot happening. He's not taking a lot out of himself. He's not taking a lot out of the team by just dotting the game up. All of a sudden, if you're now only bowling 20 maidens in 150, I mean, you're chasing around in the field, a left and right hand combination. You're having to move from leg side to offside. And the biggest key to this whole, I'm trying to make, which I'm very good at making long-winded points, is if you're going to go down the short ball route and you're consistently bowling short for 45 to 50 overs, you're taking even more out of you as a bowler and as a unit. So that the argument that you're making there is even stronger from a tired point of view when it comes to days 4, 5 of test match, of days 3, 4 of the next test match, because we're going back to back to back. And then God knows where they're going to be come the third test match when they get to Rawalpindi. And a message I put into our group chat not long ago is England picked 17 players for this trip. Josh Hull didn't come. Ben Stokes came injured. So there's 15. Ollie Stone's off to get married he's going to go as we speak. So Ben Duckett's now bust his thumb. I mean, you're talking about Bryden Cast. I mean, you can't wheel Bryden Cast, Gus Atkinson to bowl bouncers for 3 test matches back to back to back in the infancy of their careers. You're just going to kill them. So
you know what it means, didn't you? Jimmy Anderson's going to bowl the third test.
Jimmy's going to play in the third test. Yeah,
hey,
Jimmy
heard it here first.
Yeah, why not? I mean,
well, it might have to.
He's as good as anybody. And Sam Curran told us this week, if you've got a certain skill set and your face doesn't fit, you don't get a game. So Jimmy Anderson was allowed to go and play golf to come back 2 days into the test series. He might be coming in. He might not be coming over as bowling consultant. He might be coming over as bowling replacement. So
what a story!
Yeah, what a story.
But yeah, so Ben Duckett fielding at first slip. Joe Root bowls a bouncer. It's cut straight to him, and the slow-mo, it looked so painful, didn't it? It went right on the end of his thumb. He bounced up onto his chest. He caught it, and then immediately was like, oh man. He looked at his thumb and he was like,
yeah,
matron. Yes. We all feared the worst, didn't we? But it seems like it, as you said, maybe a clean dislocation, and they just popped it back in, and he might be okay to bat. But it did bring into sharp focus just how few players England have brought out to Pakistan. Because if Duckett can't play for this series, I mean, that's an almighty mess.
It is an almighty mess, especially when your one-day siders more or less away to the Caribbean. Your Lions is young, is really young. There's one glaring person that they can pick, but if they weren't going to pick him in the summer against Sri Lanka, I mean, instead of Dan Lawrence going to open the batting for, I'm talking about Keaton Jennings, then I'm not sure they're going to ship him into Pakistan at a moment's notice. So Jordan Cox will end up having to have his game. Ben Stokes potentially comes in and either opens a batting or bats probably number 3. There's all these things, but it did look a horrendous injury for Ben Duckett. The only glimmer of hope I've seen is when the cameras kept panning on him. He had probably what was like a stress ball when he was, and it looked as though the thumb was, as much as it was in strapping, it looked as though the thumb was gripping the ball and bending. So that tells me, like I said a bit earlier, that it looks as though if they're not going for an X-ray or a scan, in my experience being in dressing rooms, you go for X-rays and scans when it's really difficult to get them back into place. I mean, if the physio and the doctor has a real struggle to inject and then to try and get it back in place, all of a sudden there's complications there. It doesn't want to go in. It means there's something in the way. If it is a clean dislocation, it has gone straight back in. I mean, it's going to be sore, but I think it might be manageable. Whether he can play or not, I mean, if it was a finger, index finger, second finger, little finger, I mean, he probably would have batted tonight. But the thumb is, I mean, that's a different story altogether, which is a shame because, I mean, he's been, we talked about the 150 overs. He was at short leg for 80 of them. And the only reason he was at slip was because Joe was bowling. So, I mean, how's your luck, Ben Duckett? But also, how's your luck, Ollie Pope? Because for me, I thought he captained. I thought his fielding positions. I thought his change-ups were quite good on a placid wicket. I thought the energy levels of England were really good. I thought they kept at it. They chased everything down, and that was leading from the captain. And then he's pulled a ball straight to. I mean, that's 2 or 3 out of 10 chance of a bowler putting a arm out catching it. But what I will say, in a little bit of critical towards Ollie Pope, is in the subcontinent, your mid-wicket square leg, the fielder on the leg side just in front of square, is always a lot straighter because of the slowness of the pitch. It's always a lot straighter. And he should know that. He should know that. This is his 50th Test match, and he's played a hell of a lot in the subcontinent. It's not like in England where you just bowl a short ball, pull it. It doesn't matter if it's in the air. If I get it in front of square, it's off. It's 4. Where you pull it in front of square, there's a likelihood is in India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, there's a fielder at mid-wicket in that area. And you run the risk when you hit it in the air. And unfortunately for Ollie, that was a world he took.
Going to wrap things up, but were Pakistan a little defensive today? I mean, and that could come back to haunt them, by the way. Negative, defensive, 69 runs scored in that morning session. Shakil was 35 not out overnight. He ended up being dismissed for 82, but he went on the right old go slow. And even Arga, he went past 100, and then he seemed to leave it to Abrar Ahmed to go for the big shots. I'm not saying he's playing for a red inker, but it was a bit strange that, I don't know, I just felt Pakistan they could have got a move on a little bit earlier. Possibly.
I get that. The only thing I'd say in defence to that, if I was Jason Gillespie, is we've just lost 5 games in a row.
Well, understandably.
Look as though we were a team with devoid of confidence. So let's just, by hook or by crook, get our 550. And no matter what we get to, let's get there.
Yeah, I understand it. England have been in that position, haven't they? At times.
Nadeem Shah didn't help. Nadeem Shah helped by going in as night watchman. His batting ability is not there. I mean, I watched it this morning. Once he got past sort of 25 balls, 30 balls, it was like, it's not get out, but get on with it. I mean, you can put pressure on England bowlers by a different way. He faced 81 balls for 33 in a time where you're thinking, right, you've got England where you want them. The ball's soft. England, just give them a run around. Somebody come in and be aggressive. Take the game on, and you might pinch 20 overs. And England might have fielded 130 overs as opposed to 150, but you would have got 20 overs at the back end of a game where you're thinking possibly it could be a draw, you might need. But again, I'll come back to the fact that, I mean, Pakistan are so devoid of confidence and losing so many games in a row recently that it was, let's just get a score on the board. Let's put England under pressure. I thought defensively and fielding wise, I thought they were as well. I thought, I would have had a deep point to Zach Crawley early. But once he got going, I'd have brought the deep point up and basically said, right, you're in now. Do you feel as though you can hit every ball through, crash it through cover point for 4, and see if I could sort of nick him off that way? Other than, the way they went, they tried to sort of stop him from scoring the boundaries, and he built his confidence up by just playing nicely, lovely cover drives out to the man in the deep, and he built his confidence up by being able to hit it down the ground or then hit it a little bit squarer, as opposed to, right, now bring him up and say to Zach Crawley, do you want to, you've got that gap now, you're 30 odd now. Can I get you to lose concentration when you think you're in? I might be able to nick one past you. I thought they were quite defensive when it comes to their fielding as well.
Okay, Harmy, it'll be you and Sam Ellard tomorrow, but no doubt at all. Oh no, and then you're flying back on Thursday, so we will not be reunited till Friday and the draw that will happen at midday. We shall see. Thanks for watching or listening to Following On.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.